Since our only one speaker is left to join, and others have joined, we'll start the session. Once he joins in the middle, we can continue with the discussion along with him. Will that be fine?
I'm Dipanshu here.
Good afternoon, sir.
Hi.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Nice to connect with you all.
Discussion. Smriti, moderated discussion or how it will be?
Sir, Gopal Krishnan sir would be moderating the session. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. So welcome back to Electric Vehicle Virtual Conclave, being organized by Times Tech Print Media. For our next session, the topic is electric vehicles in the wake of COVID-19. Our speakers for the session are Shri Dipanshu Kabra sir, Additional Transport Commissioner, Government of Chhattisgarh; Shri Devi Prasad Das, sir, Executive Director, India Energy Storage Alliance; our moderator, sir, Shri Gopal Krishnan VC, sir, Director, Automotive Industries and Commerce Department, Government of Telangana. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Smriti. So welcome once again, Mr. Devi Prasad and Mr. Dipanshu. So our topic for today is more related and relevant to the times that we are in at present. Electric vehicles in the wake of COVID-19. So just to give a background, earlier today we had another session and it was more concentrated towards smart cities and smart mobility and smart transportation, with a little bit on batteries for EVs. So now what we can do is try to understand how the adoption is going to be coming out of COVID and what we can do to create more awareness among the public, and also put forward what the benefits, not just cost wise, but also environment friendly, and how it can be done going forward coming out of COVID. So as we all know, electric vehicles can help create a more environmentally and financially sustainable post-COVID-19 world. As Nobel Prize winning economist Paul Romer once noted, a crisis is a terrible thing to waste. So despite the destructive and painful nature of the pandemic, it also offers a once in a century opportunity to pause business as usual vehicle production and shift towards a clean, green, economical and electric future. So on these lines, I would first request Mr. Dipanshu to answer this question. Government of India has been emphasizing on the importance of transitioning towards electric. What are your thoughts on whether the focus on EVs would continue post COVID-19?
Thank you, everybody, and thank you for inviting me to join this session. And we've all been through this COVID pandemic, and we are in midst of it. So it is a time when we need to realize that when there is a lot of lockdown in most of these areas, even though we have not announced it, but in some way partial or full lockdown. My state had a full lockdown and we have just opened up here. So the recovery that we would like to have out from this place. So our previous lockdown perception that we had thought that there wouldn't be growth in the automobile industry, and but it didn't happen that way. And there was a lot of demand after the lockdown, and especially for personal vehicles. Four-wheelers grew in huge numbers, even in our Chhattisgarh and rural areas. As compared to other states, it grew quite well. The reason was were many. Our rural economy is improving. We are giving a lot of money to our farmers, procuring their crops. So I am seeing this transition as a police officer, as in the field I saw, and in the transport department as well. So, but yes, the new generation which we all belong to, and the millennium ones, they are more interested in going into these EVs. They are more concerned about the environment and things. But for other places, like the people in our rural areas or the middle class is more concerned on how efficient that would be. Second, its cost. Third, the perception that maybe you have discussed it all, the charging issues, the vehicle battery issues and all. I think those are the ones, and it is again a chicken and egg problem, that which should come first. Will the charging come or will the vehicle should come? I think that dilemma is all across. And what I all read across for other states and all, we need to simultaneously push. And in the future, what I am feeling is that this lockdown has given us a lot of chance to ponder upon that how we should live. And I am expecting that this change that is going to occur, and we are expecting many new people going and opting for EVs. I for myself would be shifting and at least taking one EV, and we are planning that we'll push through EVs in our government sector.
It's very heartening to hear that there is a push from government side as well to take up and at least start off the adoption in a big way, so that it slowly progresses towards self-sustenance. So here I take a moment. Professor Venkatesh Balasubramanian has also joined us. So he is working with the Department of Engineering Design at IIT Madras. Welcome, Professor. So,
thank you.
So my next question would be to Mr. Devi Prasad. Every state has a phase-wise plan towards transitioning their public bus fleet to electric. So what is your take on the impact of COVID-19 on this plan?
So this is a hard question. Like now, the consumer side or the customer side, they are now avoiding the public transport due to the contact, and people should not keep the distance. So on the public transport side, now we may not see a growth for next minimum 1 to 2 years, maybe in short-term basis. So that is a positive note. The personal vehicle will increase. It may be the affordable vehicle segment may get a good growth, and the higher luxury segment might take some time. So that will indicate on EV side, maybe two-wheelers will get a higher sales. I'm just comparing the last year facts. The sales down in IC vehicle is higher than the sales down in EV vehicles. So EV vehicle, yes, there is a drop in sales, but that is insignificant. But IC vehicles drop has been decreased. So the adoption of public buses, definitely the consumer side, they will not prefer, but it's the best time for states to now buy new buses, because we understand the states have limited buses or public transport, so that instead of 20 people, there is now 50 people travel in a single bus. So best time to rectify the mistakes and add new public transports in this pandemic time. So once will over and India will get back to work, then there's instead of 500 buses, there should be 5,000 buses in a cities or in metro cities or tier 1, tier 2. And it is also best time to develop for the infrastructure, because with the more traffic on the road, the new infrastructure development takes lots of time. Now the traffic on the road is the minimal, so new charging stations, swapping stations, that can be developed. Now new EV highways can be considered, or maybe the telecom towers which is in the national highways, that can be converted as a hybrid stations for the telecom tower and charging stations. So these type of new innovative models should be experimented by the states.
Great insights. So I hear that going forward there could be little less adoption in the electric bus segment, but private segment would definitely, private vehicles, there would be definitely a good uptake. So let me take that point forward and post a question to Professor Venkatesh. So earlier analysis was that ICE vehicle manufacturers, they would maybe have a modified line which can work on the ICE engine assembly as well as ICE vehicle assembly as well as the EVs. But now, since there is such a big drop in numbers for the ICE vehicles, do you think this is an opportune moment for the vehicle manufacturers to jump on the bandwagon and create a dedicated electric vehicle manufacturing line?
Electric vehicles, anyway, so in any automotive manufacturing, the final assembly plant is just assembling things. They are only catering to customer demand. What is more important is to have the ecosystem ready, and the ecosystem has to be catering for all the subcomponents that are there, or your tier 1 suppliers, and then the tier 2 and tier 3 and so on. Instead of tracking the final assembly plants, I would rather track, if you look at it, you're reducing the number of components that go into the vehicle, but the components that come have a very high value add. So obviously there's going to be a lot of churning of your tier 1s. And there is eventually, all good runs come to an end. So there would be some manufacturers that are able to get into that space and are able to get those few components. And in that particular, let's look at it. You need to make the weight light so that you can extend the range. You need to make sure your battery pack is sufficient, because that's the only fuel you have. And you need to have a better management system that can manage the battery effectively. So all three are good. So I would look at it, rather than big companies doing something, I'm actually looking forward for more startups and the smaller players disrupting the process within a codified norm, in a sense that if you have 300 different components go into same thing, so then the market will self-destruct. So some way by which things can plug in and plug out. So it's a great time it's a great churn. And we are going through a reset across the spectrum. And as the reset happens, what comes out of the reset could be, an electric vehicle. I'm not saying that is the only thing that's going to come out, but one, if it is an electric vehicle, it will be a certain amount of churning. The only word of caution that I would add is, it should not, it took about 35-40 years for our manufacturing industry to get into product development. Until then, they were just, getting a license and manufacturing things. After a long time, we are now actually doing R&D rather than, doing a drafting deal. And now, will that continue in electric vehicle, or whether we are going to just import battery management systems, we are going to import batteries, we are going to import lightweighting components from outside? That is not a great way forward. So personally, I'll feel we need to probably get these knowledge part of the work within the spectrum, rather than go on an EV hunt wherein we enrich, or rather we kill our domestic R&D capability going forward. So I think that's the only caution we need to have, and that caution will work only if more and more people are getting into developing things as we go.
Thank you, Professor. So I understand that start from basics, improve the R&D, and put more focus on lightweighting and on battery technology and BMS, and slowly reduce our import dependence on the components. So this would be the way forward. And of course, this is a good reset to be in, like you rightly mentioned. So let me bring Mr. Deepanshu again back on board. So Government of India last year announced a 20 lakh crores special stimulus package. This was sometime in April, May last year. So can state governments also support EV adoption by the encouraging growth of charging infrastructure and incentivizing EV purchases through such COVID-19 relief packages for the industry?
I feel yes. Whatever I've read for other states as well, and I'm seeing at my place. In fact, we at our electricity regulatory authority, they have given a flat rate of 5 rupees per kV. So that is how they have fixed it instead of slab wise. So at a charging station, they have fixed that rate. So I feel that this is a time that we should push in, and that, as I have earlier told, we need to understand two things from the point of view of a customer. One is that he is going to compare it with the cost. So he'll go for a capex and then an operating cost. So what is the rate is the vehicle coming? And because when I was pushing a friend of mine to do this, so he was understanding that how the subsidy is going to help me, and what will be my cost that the vehicle is going to come, and what will be my operating cost. So that is one major reason. So here is where the state should pitch in and push in people to go for adopting these vehicles. Second is, at the same time, smart cities have really come, as you have discussed earlier. So they have a lot of funds with them as well. And the states can also pitch in people, as is being said, to bring in new people and a new special purpose vehicle or new things which will add up to this infrastructure. So because to build up a confidence for people to run a car. So suppose there are two cities, if I have to go from Bangalore to Bangalore, so I should have that confidence that one is either I have my battery switching at some place, or I have places where I can charge my batteries. So the companies who are manufacturers, the ventures capitalists or other firms, as is being said, should pitch in, and the state governments as well as the central government should help to bring in more infrastructure into this place.
Perfect. So I understand that states should also sponsor a little bit and push the adoption, and also there is funds with smart cities which can be used for the initial few years of adoption, limited adoption, so that there is good push and awareness among the people, so that to make it more sustained. So let me bring Mr. Devi Prasad back on board. My question to you, this would be very close to your heart. COVID-19 gave a wake-up call on the importance of supply chain resilience. So what are your thoughts in bringing India to the forefront by becoming a powerhouse of energy storage technology?
Okay, so there is a good news already mentioned by the central government last week on the PLI announcement. So India may see 50 gigawatt hour manufacturing. We at ISA expect there will be 80 to 130 gigawatt hour of applications might come. We are in touch with around 15 to 17 conglomerates from India and a consortium who are applying for this. And good part about this, it is not about only lithium ion or advanced technology. There are futuristic technology. Other countries adopted after 10 years of adopting lithium ion and others, like it may be solid state batteries, lithium sulfur, or metal air batteries. For that also government allocated another 5 gigawatt hour subsidies. The framework is now, we have started on that, and 26 we are by meeting with DHI and NITI Aayog. So you may see another 5 gigawatt hour tender for the solid state batteries, and other advanced niche chemistries will come up. So good part is that what happened in the semiconductor industry and what happened in the solar industry, government only pushed the adoption of the technologies for 10 years or 12 years. That made India as a market, but not to supply anything. So, but in storage industry with stakeholders input, we are doing parallelly. One is storage adoption, both on the e-mobility, power electronics, grid side, renewable integration, and in parallel to that, both R&D and also the manufacturing is taking step. Yes, there will be question will come up that why we don't have raw materials, why we will do this. We don't have raw materials, exploration is happening, Ministry of Mines is working on that, Kabil is working on that. Why we not set up in the chemical processing? Yes, we don't have lithium, but to make lithium to lithium oxide, that type we can set up. And we can also set up the institutions like for the membrane, for the container. So the ecosystem can be developed, and also gigafactory can develop. Through these, out of 100%, we can capture 80% of the value chain. which is going to the EV or electric mobility, the 50% cost is batteries. If you take 50% as import, then making a electric vehicle in India, we cannot tell it's make in India. Till now, government, central government is extending FAME to criteria for electric buses. Like they gave a timeline by 2019 February. They want electric vehicles, battery or buses, specific to electric buses, batteries to be in India, pack assembling to be in India, so that they will eligible to get subsidy. But they extended times, they have extended. So we don't want that to be long term, so that we can tell it is really making in India. Instead of 100% value capture, if you can capturing 80% of the battery making value, that is fine. Let's capture that 80%. Don't be an idealistic world that I will only go for 100% value capture. So this is one positive step by central governments, and many of the states are actually working on this, including Telangana, Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka, Maharashtra, Gujarat. So it's a very good step in India, and we're actively engaged in this ecosystem. Many global companies are also interested in this space. So now India is thinking about 50 gigawatt hour, and we're thinking about it's maybe very big, but we should plan for like 100 gigawatt hour by 2030, or like 500 gigawatt hour by 2040. So we should have that much of ambitions. Like 10 years back, only few gigafactories, not 10 years, 3-4 years back, there was only gigafactories in China. There was no gigafactories in Europe. We know many automobile companies in Europe was not able to compete with Chinese of a 20 or 25 gigawatt hour of capacity. What they made consortium. Automobile companies made a consortium. They put up a manufacturing plant in Europe. So there are ways in there. If you have a value capture in India, there are different ways. There are 5-6 ways, 5-6 questions already, concerns are there. If you want, all industries can revolve around that 5-6 concerns, but we should overcome that and go ahead on the manufacturing ecosystem, so that electric mobility, which is now assembled in India, really should be manufactured in India. And there is demand is there. Like now, yes, we know many states and central government like ESL and others, they are driving the government EV adoption. Like government offices should adopt EVs, government officials should travel EV. But I think that is the next stage, because now the cargo, like in COVID time, we all are acquainted with online deliveries. So online delivery is increased in COVID pandemic, that we are ignoring. So for this online delivery, it is not going a 100-kilometer distance or 200-kilometer distance. It is in a circle of 10 or 20-kilometer circle. So for this small distance, electric vehicle is the best thing to go. So this delivery guys like Zomato, Swiggy and other, they should first adopt this, or Flipkart, Amazon. So they should first adopt this. So this is the opportunity, pandemic given an opportunity in which segment EV actually making a big. Similarly, for the corporate offices or the factories inside, when there is a chain of or a cluster of factories, like if we are making a vehicle and I have to take my raw materials from 10-kilometer distance, I can use the cargo from electric cargos from that office, that factories to this factory. So this type of opportunity is given in last 1 or 2 years. I think industries should step up now, or this new age factories should step up now to adopt EV. We may not wait everything from government to give us, like government will give subsidies, so then only we will buy.
Rightly said. So there should be more focus from the industry players as well to bring in the ecosystem in India, so that India can become a powerhouse. This is your comment. And of course, there is lots of work happening around the technology of battery, lithium-ion, lithium sulfur, metal air, and other solid state technologies coming up going forward. So it is actually a mix of different technologies, and we are not actually just having one or two, relying on one or two, but we are having a portfolio of solutions with us to go with. So let me bring Professor Venkatesh back to the discussion. Professor, I'm sure IIT Madras would be collaborating a lot with the startups and with the industry players. So could you give us a brief background of what all is going on the research space?
So I'm exactly not the right person to answer that question. There is a fairly, let's put it this way. So there is a significant amount of work that goes in the battery and the storage system as such, and the BMS that is there. So there is a Center for Battery Research that works at IIT Madras. I'm sure all in the EV space probably know Professor Ashok Jhunjhunwala and his team. They've been at it for a long time. There have been other alternate storage devices that have been on research. I mean, that attracts my attention more than a simple uh, battery as such. So there have been alternate mechanisms from fuel cells to using iron and other aspects for storage that has been there. So you're not dependent on very exotic materials that you probably can't lay your hands on, or the mines that are going to produce are probably leased to other countries, and you will anyway have to buy it from them. So then they're not going to sell you a raw material, they're going to sell you a finished good. So that kind of disrupting that process, is significant amount of research that happens with some of our colleagues. There are a few patents that they have applied for, and they are trying to get that across. Now, then again, so then there is an entire ecosystem of the e-vehicle, what you do with other aspects of the e-vehicle that goes into. So there is a significant amount of research that happens. Again, any research is not going to happen in an isolated corner in one place, or one place is the epitome of all the research. I think it's a sum total of the work that happens and the disruptions that come into play. As I said before, e-vehicle as a story that is told, I'm not particularly a big fan of it. But e-vehicle as a narrative that needs to be generated, where we are doing our R&D internally, or bringing in disruptions that are going to disrupt the process. Instead of following, we should be leading into that. So I think there are a good number of research that happens within the IITM's ecosystem, and the IITM collaboration with industry that goes on into that aspect. Yeah, but again, as I said, I mean, I should have expected that question, but I didn't plan for it. But if you could just Google up, there's enough that CB that runs as the Center for Excellence in Battery Technologies, and Professor Ram Prabhu and his work on metal oxide based
Yeah,
battery,
absolutely. Yeah,
and other work that happens with fuel cell and other aspects that are there.
definitely good to hear pointers on the kind of research that is happening. Let me bring back Mr. Deepanshu again into this, and just I would like to understand, maybe you can keep it restricted to Chhattisgarh if you want to. But how was the ecosystem? Is it ready for bringing in more electric vehicles in terms of skilled manpower who can work on this as mechanics and sales people, or at different levels you need different skills, and it has to be slightly upskilling or reskilling of the existing people that are there. So how is it happening in Chhattisgarh?
So I have been interacting with the sales team, because they have earlier when I was in police, and through some Government of India association, some company, they were planning of giving subsidies through this. So the sales teams are good. They were pushing on through these vehicles. The green number plate was one attraction that we had to do. Second is they were giving it on a lease basis, wherein a monthly installment was to be given instead of purchasing them right through. So that was one more option. Third, when I drove that vehicle, and then I talked about how would the maintenance, all things would be. So especially for Tata and Mahindra, these two companies, so they were very positive about the four-wheeler things, and I found that they had this. one thing which I have seen a change all throughout, I've been interacting with the other transport commissioners and other officers. The three-wheeler auto segment has picked up quite well. So the auto and rickshaw, electric rickshaw segment. In fact, a local company of ours, Hira Group, it's there. They've come with the e-blue auto rickshaw, a three-wheeler rickshaw, which they are again leasing it. You don't need to buy. So the hand-pulled rickshaws are being replaced by these rickshaws. One is the local transport is also being done, as I've been saying. So the small goods transfers are also being done through these. During COVID times, these people even gave free services also for taking on people from one place to other, transporting oxygen cylinders and all. So what I mean to say is that there are people who are there, not in my state and in other states as well, that those who are doing these, and there are a number of people especially for it, maybe for the battery and electrical part as well, the mechanical thing. So I feel all of us are more or less rightly placed. And since the companies are involving the local dealers who have been dealing in the petrol and the diesel vehicles only, so there isn't much problem regarding these things, which I perceive. It's only a change of mindset that needs to come. And once it comes, or change of an importance of brand, that green number plate, if we can push through, that this is one thing. If you have a green number plate in your vehicle, it is something which you should cherish for. If our children would come and tell our other parents, no, I want a vehicle which has a green, or even if an electric vehicle, I think that will give a change in the society, that the perception would change. So people will opt more for these things.
Absolutely, yeah. So green number plate definitely is giving more eyeballs into this to own an EV, and show that you are also caring towards the environment, and putting whatever you can towards achieving. So again, let me bring back Mr. Devi Prasad. Could you elaborate on how you are working with the different states towards adoption? Like, are there any? Of course, right now we are all under lockdown, but are you planning for road shows and any other marketing promo for bringing the concept of EV to the common man?
Okay, so this is there are very few organizations working on this. So we have an initiative called EV Adopter Circle. So what we do through EV Adopter Circle, we have partnered with ESL and also ARI and ICAT, where we actually trying to give values to the consumers. So last 8 years, we saw like electric e-rickshaws becoming a boom, but that is a negative impact. Like when I did the first EV conclave in 2015 at ICAT, 800 plus e-rickshaws was there. Now there is around 200 to 250. So on the number of companies who are manufacturing e-rickshaws is down by 1/3. So that is positive note, because the EV qualities, irrespective two-wheeler, four-wheeler, or it is three-wheelers, the quality need to be better. Otherwise, it will send a negative signal. Like if you're not addressing the safety issues, if you're using the second-hand or neighbor country which is providing the cells, second-hand cells in electric vehicles, we're now getting news every week, like some e-rickshaws caught fire in West Bengal or other locations. That will set a negative impact. So what we do through EV Adopter Circle, actually we are monitoring the battery health, how much you should charge or how much you should not charge. Like many people do the overnight charging, but your battery may not require that. You should, and your BMS should be that much intelligent to cut your battery at some point in time. So these e-rickshaws don't have that, or many two-wheelers also don't have that. And also we don't have a good products in four-wheelers. Good number of options we don't have that in India. We have very limited options for four-wheelers. So we work with the OEMs on the product quality, also on the consumers to monitor the batteries of the EVs. Also, we help them to identify the best routes. Like there is new startups in India, 3 to 4 startups, which is suggesting the best route so that your battery will be charged at different charging stations. Like you don't require a backup battery. Like many now new two-wheelers have a backup battery. You will put one battery and another battery you will carry to your home to charge that. It will be dispatchable from your vehicles. So these are innovative solutions, don't require if you have the proper planning for your EV adoptions. And for states, what we do, we try to help the state transport department or their agencies who are managing the fleet of vehicles, like their plan of adoptions and choosing the right vehicle, right battery size, right charging infrastructure, and how many sockets need to be there in each charging stations. So from planning stage to implementation stage in EVSE, yes, we understand many companies and organizations should feel that it is just a way for tendering. Like through tender, I will get the low quality EVs, and that's done. I got 5 EVs, 10 EVs. I'll do a ribbon cut and it will come in a newspaper. But that is not the way for a sustainable mobility. Sustainable mobility implies how you are implementing that. And also, after 10 years, your vehicle batteries will be retired and you need to replace that with the new batteries. What will happen to that second-hand battery? Which companies will sign a buyback guarantee with the state buy that second-hand batteries, and they will maybe use some of the cells from that battery again, or they will also dispatch to like precious metal like cobalt or lithium for the recycling, and other metals they will just dispose in India. So these things need to be incorporated in the state EV adoption plan. It is not like number of vehicles, I am just buying it and using it, or it is better to buy, or it is better to take a rent from companies like AAA Taxi, Blue Smart, or there are companies like Ola Electric. There are many fleet operators came into picture now. So it is better for that. So this type of we are trying to help. We have engaged with 2-3 states on this ground, and we are closely work with Tamil Nadu on creating a policy for one of the city. So this is the way I will be happy to suggest in any state governments, and we're happy to work with any state departments on this. And we think that there is a gap. Yes, product innovation is one thing. Many companies are working on business model. Innovation is required to make that product sustainable in India.
Got it. So great insights. Understand that you are working on some kind of a policy, city-specific policy. Of course, we would also be interested in knowing this. We can connect offline definitely on that. So taking it forward, Professor Venkatesh, I had maybe one more question to you. So this is with regards to how the interest levels are, among the MTechs and the PhD students at IIT Madras. Maybe you can talk about how it was prior to COVID and after COVID in this space, to do research or to take up some course on this topic, and how was the assistance from the ASDC, the Automotive Skill Development Council? A broad view.
Well, I think to start with, people have to start coming to colleges when it opens up, and then we can talk about the enthusiasm level and take things on that thing. So COVID, as I said, is a good reset. People get time to reflect on things that we could do, which also means people look for opportunities to take things forward. To come to your specific question of whether there would be an excitement, I think excitement is driven by what popular perception is rather than actual need. So if there are jobs going to be available and the perception is good, people are going to be coming in. As such, it is not that big event. I mean, if you look at it, the employability from the e-vehicle business is not as high as your IC engine based businesses, but there would be a higher level of employment for a better level of research and other things that can come about. There are better safety systems that need to be brought about. I mean, at least I personally don't know if there is a standardized format of even putting up an insurance for, you know, electric vehicles that come by, or standardized way by which we can even have range extending charges that can be done. I mean, we all work today, whatever good that we talk about, our vehicles are only as good as a charge that you could pump in the previous night, right? And you're not going to be moving things forward. So that leaves with a lot of opportunity for doing things that can do a lot of work. So there are two perspectives. So the first question, is there an excitement? Maybe there is an excitement. We will get to see it when we get to see the students back on campus, which we are not. I mean, I don't see them coming immediately. Maybe they would eventually, not maybe, they will eventually come, but not at the present instant. But there is an opportunity that exists, but that opportunity need to be articulated better, because skill development from a perspective of traditional manufacturing and a skill development in the e-vehicle are two different entities, right? So maintaining the vehicle, or repairing them, or manufacturing them required a much more number of employees with a lot of skill sets that are required. So even definition of what will be the skill development that we are going to articulate. I mean, even concepts of what is automobile engineering or a diploma in automobile. I'm not talking about MS PhD, but a diploma in automobile engineering. What is it that will be catered? All those things need to be addressed. But to give a motherhood statement, yeah, the excitement will be there. But the question is, how long will it sustain, and will there be enough money in the circuit? Right now, the business runs because there is a lot of subsidy. Will the business eventually sustain because the market is sustaining it? That's a questionable one. I mean, I have my own views on it, because unless you put it in the market and the market actually evaluates it, it is only artificially propped up. And artificial propping up works only for some time. After that, market forces decide how things will go. So that is applicable even for an MS PhD student in terms of their interest level on what they do. Is again, I mean, where is he going to be employed? If there are only 10 jobs that is available, there is no point in having 100,000 people doing for that 10 jobs. So what is it that is going to be available? But there is an opportunity at the same time in working on niche areas of things that can make things better. And we all hope people come back to campus and they actually start exploring in these areas. There's an entire spectrum of safety that is not addressed in e-vehicle. I mean, he talked about, one of the speakers talked about the fires in e-rickshaws because of the quality standards are a little suspect in terms of where they come from. And when you're going for a swap, how do we ensure that the swapped ones are good, right? So instead of having adulteration in petrol, we need to look at how long has a battery been. So what do you have as systems that can bring in to establish standards and quality? Those are all great research topics to work on. So there's ample opportunities that exist, but the question is, will the market sustain it for that long?
Thank you for your views, Professor. So absolutely, very rightly said that the interest among MS and PhD students in this space would closely follow the business case that the industry is seeing, as well as how the offtake is going and employment generation in this space. So let me, before I go to one last question to Mr. Deepanshu, let me also request the audience, if you have any questions, please put it in the chat so that we can take it up after this. So this is my, this would be my last question, Mr. Deepanshu. I just wanted to understand what else is being talked about or discussed within, maybe you can take Chhattisgarh itself as an example, or broadly, whether we can go for green corridors where only EVs will run, if not now, maybe a few years down the lane. have specific parking slots in places, public places just for the EVs, and any such measures which would help the owner of an EV to take this call of purchasing an EV.
Yeah. So if we talk of the public transport, I think we have this clarity that whosoever applies for whichever slot of the permit, maybe it's in the peak hour permit as well, we are giving it to them. So that is what is one thing which is one of the initiatives, so that you have buses, you have vehicles who want permit to be taken by the state departments, and there are certain times where you get the maximum number of people going into it, and these permits have costly as well. The most important thing is you don't get those permits. So these are the peak time permits which will be available to these public transport companies who are operating this vehicle. So when I was analyzing that if we could use it out there, the only hitch that was coming out was the high cost of the vehicles, and so it was not economically viable for them to run as it. But as you are seeing, and as we've been discussing, once these costs about the batteries and all come down, and the way these fuel prices otherwise are going across, I feel there would be a time where this will happen. Simultaneously, as other states have been pushing up, we also need to give certain these kinds of non-monetary benefits as well to the owners of priority parking for them in crowded places, the most important markets where people would like to go, or some kind of prioritization at other places as well, in malls or other places, so that it will give a push up. So, but as Mr. Venkatesh told, finally it is we would give them these kinds of fill-ups, but it's more at the end would be driven by the demand and supply and how people perceive it. I know there's a lot of talk. Even initial when we were studying, we never thought and we never talked about carbon footprints or any other things, and we never thought that these internal combustible vehicles were in any way contributing to the pollution. But if you talk to the kids now in the school, they would talk all kinds of things, and then they know everything. So I think that is what I have been telling, that in the few years down the line, as it has been, and the way people are even adopting the solar energy thing for their own houses, for their farmhouses, for in the villages to generate electricity. So then people will always want to shift to these kinds of places where we have less carbon footprint. And I am very positive on this, and we are working on a policy, and we have been seeing other states' policy as well. And I would get connected to you all to help me draft a one, because there are other agencies also. We have our CREDA, Renewable Energy Development Authority, which works for it. So we, in conjunction with them, would like to come up with policy which other can also imitate.
Absolutely, Mr. Deepanshu. Really good thought on the non-monetary benefits that can be also passed on, which can push the adoption. So I think there is one question that came up. Why do hybrid vehicles are not given a focus instead of a direct transition from ICE to electric? Okay, so does I think Mr. Devi Prasad, would you like to take this?
So it's an interesting question, and we support this. But the story, I think everyone should know it, and people might aware of it. The electric vehicle story is not 2-year story. It's a 20-year story, starting from the traders selling electric bikes in early 2000 to 2004. Then cheaters using small batteries and getting the maximum incentive in FAME 1. In FAME 1, one of the companies in India, very well known, got 98% of the subsidy in 1 year in hybrid vehicle, where it was not defined the battery size. So with all due respect, government wanted to promote electric vehicle. So in FAME 2, with that fear, they stopped including hybrid vehicle. But we as IESA strongly feel hybrid should also included in adoption, because but the battery size need to be defined. Otherwise, in a big IC vehicle, you just use a 1 kilowatt battery, 1 kilowatt hour battery, and you get all the incentive. That is not justified. So in the public forum, I don't want to mention the name. So that was the reason behind the stop in FAME 2. But we hope in the extension of FAME 2, government should consider hybrid vehicle. It is good for the transition, and across the globe hybrid vehicles are encouraged. It may be mild hybrid, or it may be strong hybrid, or it is maybe plug-in, or you can use ultra capacitor for the small storage for power applications when you are going in different heights to heights. So there are different ways can be evolved, but it should not be stopped. Hope government will understand and will accept it. A few state government will include it in their state policies.
Absolutely, Mr. Devi Prasad. So the answer is hybrid vehicles, of course, should also be considered, but definitely the specification of battery and everything should be well defined so that everything is under control. So there is another question on the carbon credits. How less damaging electric vehicles are compared to the ICE engines in terms of carbon credits, because battery manufacturing is also a very nasty process. I leave it open. Anyone can go for this.
If no one answers, then I can tell. It's a so there are different studies across the globe. So the old mindset guys always ask such questions, and we respect and we respectfully answer such questions too. Because if in the value chain from generation side, if you are using the coal and you are using that in grid and you are using in EVs, then all your effort is actually waste. So you should also focus on, as government is focusing on 450 gigawatt of renewable energy in the grids, which can be used in the charging stations, and that will, when that will go to grid, it will be used in industry for manufacturing, and it will also go to the charging stations. So the ecosystems need to consider the renewable energy as the source of energy. That we understand. Otherwise, this question will arise after 20 years also.
Correct. So there should be more focus on how it can be made more clean. The production can be made more clean, and whether we can give back like a kind of form of circular economy kind of a thing in terms of production of these batteries and components. The next question is related to trucks and buses. Can these also become electric, and would these be feasible in our country? Maybe Mr. Deepanshu.
So the basic solution is very simple. It is the one is that whenever these buses or trucks would be moving, they will be carrying heavy load. So you need to have those kind of power with them to push it. So the more power you need, then the heavy batteries that are there, battery themselves take a lot of weight. So that is one basic reason. And maybe with the way this the innovations are coming up, and we are coming up with new kinds of batteries and all. So I feel that as we are seeing Tesla moving on into it in other places, and research and all, we all also doing. And if we copy in other countries, I feel in the future, yes, maybe 5 years down the lane, we would be pushing in, because a lot of these vehicles are contributing to a lot of pollution and other things. So maybe, yes, down the line, we'll have these kinds of buses and trucks as well.
Absolutely, yes. And thank you, Mr. Deepanshu. One last question, I think I myself will take that. In addition to EVs, we should have more charging stations to build confidence among buyers. Is government doing enough? So definitely, I think Mr. Dipanshu, Mr. Devi Prasad, and also Professor Venkatesh would agree with me that there is quite a lot that each of the states are doing in this space to bring in more private players and give them tender locations to them on a pilot basis initially, and then maybe if the operations is going well, then give it to them for on a permanent basis. So this is happening in every state, and of course REIL, NTPC, and ESL have taken up a majority of the initial setting up of charging stations in most of the states, and which is really good because state and national PSUs are doing it. Even in Hyderabad, I can say that around 50 charging stations are available right now, and also TS Redco, Telangana State Renewable Energy Development Corporation, as well as PUMTA, which is Hyderabad Unified Metropolitan Transport Authority. They have identified 500, 600 more locations, of which the first phase of 50 locations would be first given to the private players, maybe on a pilot basis, or would be some other commercial arrangement. I'm not very sure about that, but the tender documents is in the preparation is in progress. So I would say that similarly, I am very sure that in every other state there is a lot of activity going around, bringing more clarity and more risk averse this thing to reduce the range anxiety among people who want to move, who are looking for that particular push to move towards EVs. But of course, I would also say that the number of models at present among the electric vehicle segments is very less, and if this can be thought about, and if the variants can be increased by the OEMs, the vehicle manufacturers, then I think there would be more interest among the people in comparing, because we always compare and buy whatever is more valuable or gives us more value, we go for it. But if there is very less to compare from, then it becomes difficult. So that is also one thing that is there. But all the while, when we talk about EVs, I would definitely take Professor Venkatesh. He had cautioned about the EVs and about how the battery technology should also improve, and on the safety side also. So this is also very, very important. And I'm sure that academia as well as other think tanks are looking at every possible situation or new forms of technology and research that's happening around the world, and trying to emulate that and come up with better solutions, and faster charging mechanisms. Otherwise, like Professor rightly mentioned, it would be just the overnight charge that keeps you going until wherever you can go. So of course, swappable models and other things are happening, but definitely there is a lot more work that is required here. So with that, I think, okay, we have one more question. Maybe this could be the last question, because we are going slightly over time. So the last question: in addition to EVs, we should have more. Happy to see many startups coming up with e-vehicles in India. However, profit margin in producing an ICE is high over an electric vehicle. How to overcome the scenario on long run? What is the viability or sustainability for producers to make margin and sustain? Does anyone want to go for it?
How many of the startups actually make money?
Yeah.
Or how many of the big companies that have been on VC funding actually make money, other than perception?
Yeah, absolutely on it, on the plot. Yeah, so right now I would say, yeah, it needs more. Maybe that when the technology is improving over
I think the challenge is not making money. The challenge is creating value or IP that you need to create, and monetizing that IP over a period of time. A startup which is going to do a small thing may not be able to monetize that small thing in a reasonable frame of time. So that's not going to be a viable one. Of course, an investor will invest in it. He has his own calculation of his returns that need not be all in one-dimensional money that he makes. So from a perspective, at least I look at it rather, wet behind the ears. The challenge now is actually to build technology. Right now, the EV narrative has gone to extremely dumbed down version of let's copy and let's be EV, because we are nowhere close to be. I mean, if a European nation which doesn't manufacture automobiles are into EV, great. But for us, we have an extraordinarily well automobile industry. For it to transition into EV requires how we build technology internally, and how in that process we are able to employ a large segment of our population effectively and productively. Otherwise, we are going to go in the wrong direction. Second, I think there was a discussion that went on in terms of the carbon credits and other thing. I think when 80% of your power comes from burning coal, charging it by flipping a switch in your house, and that vehicle not polluting is not exactly environmental friendly. Or mining lithium by pumping in acid and dumping out 99.9% of the ore extract is not circular. And definitely mining lithium in Congo and bringing it in India is not circular. So there is a huge opportunity for building this technology. EV as a concept to disrupt is good. Now, technology that needs to be built is not going to be built by the big companies. It has to be done by the smaller fellows. And that is the monetization that the startups have. The startups monetization is to build these technologies and then find a way to sell them. So you can make money only by building value. You don't make money by putting advertisements. Short term, yes. Long term, no.
Absolutely, yeah. So thank you, Professor, and also Mr. Devi Prasad and Mr. Dipanshu for your thoughts and how the way forward should be. Over to you, Smriti. I think.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Like always, it's great to hear our thought leaders, and it was great to hear now also. So we would like to felicitate our speakers with a certificate as a token of appreciation. I request to please present the certificate to Shri Dipanshu Kabra, sir. It was a great opportunity to have you, sir. Thank you. Shri Devi Prasad, sir. Professor Venkatesh Balasubramanian. Thank you so much, sir. And lastly, our moderator for the session, Shri Gopal Krishnan VC, sir. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. Thanks to our audience also who joined us throughout the event. And for them, we'll be coming out with a new event really soon. So stay tuned, and we hope to have you again with us in our next webinar. Till then, take care and stay safe.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.